Hello, Garland Nixon here. And after, just a paltry 20 days in office, Donald Trump has put forth a salvo of chaos, a salvo of executive orders, and all kinds of stuff going on. Let's talk. Hello, Garland here. I'm working a little bit at a time, trying to figure out my settings here. I don't know if I'll ever get them straight, but whatever the case may be, everybody let me know how the sound is. Let me know if it's okay to you. Believe it or not, I've gone away. I was using these earbuds, and believe it or not, I'm using them a lot. They were kind of screwing with my hearing a bit. So I'm going away from earbuds and going in a different direction. Anyway, so we're going to talk about old Trumpy. 20 days in, seems like 20 years, doesn't it? Mark Salvo is hilarious, and he refers to Trump as a chaos bomb, right? And I'll tell you this, I have never, that is, I'm sorry about this, I'm struggling a little bit here. I got to make sure, look, I finally figured out that I got to turn the sound off on my phone. People know, I was known by, people used to say I never, they didn't feel like my live streams had really got going until my phone went off at least one time. It was almost like I had friends who were watching going like, oh, wait, hey, Garland's doing a live stream. Quick, call him 10 minutes in. So anyway, let's go. Thanks a lot, everybody, for taking the time out of your busy day to check it out. Let's roll. Let's start here. I think the operative word is chaos. I think the operative word in Trump is chaos. And I think that I'll put it this way. I don't think it's intentional chaos. I don't think Trump's like, I'm going to commit chaos. I'm going to create chaos, and then everybody will fill in the blank, right? I think it's Trump is, shall we say, enigmatic. He's enigma. He's a riddle, a puzzle, hard to figure out. And I think what happens is this, and I've touched on this in some other videos. We try to figure Donald Trump out using our paradigm, using our view of life. You know, you ever see somebody do something and you listen to another person, you say, what do you think? And this is what people do. Well, if it was me, I would. Well, I would. If I were in that situation, I would, right? But why? Because people try to use their view of the world, their mental map of the world, to figure out what other people will do, what other people are thinking, how other people are acting, right? And that is a very flawed methodology, shall we say, because nobody thinks like you but you. And so, particularly more than ever, I've had to make some adjustments here with Trump to say, let me figure out what he does and try to match that up to what he says, rather than listen to what he says and then try to speculate as what he's going to do based on what he says, because more often than not, the two don't necessarily go together. Let's start here. One thing is obvious, and I'm an ADD person, right? Attention deficit disorder, which I don't think is a disorder. I think it's a blessing. Most ADD people are really good at certain things, not so good at other things, but the things that they're good at, they're really good at, right? Or things that they really enjoy and really like. God knows these crazy people can sit around and read books for hours and hours and hours if it's something they really like. And so they can learn a lot. If not, 5 seconds and they're off to other things, right? Based on the chaotic opening of the Trump administration, to me, it's obvious. And I already thought before, he's an ADD person. Old Doge boy. Elon Musk, he's an ADD person. Also, they're ADD people, which means they're all over the place, which means they're trying to do everything at once. They're trying to address all these different issues at the same time. And I think those of us who have ADD understand how that works, right? Not very well at all. And that creates chaos. So I think the chaotic situation that you see in the Trump administration and in the Trump policy program reflects the chaotic situation inside of Trump and the old Doge guy, etc. Right? I do think, now let me say this, I do think, and I'm going to reiterate something I've said in many videos, but I'm going to make it very brief because I don't want to seem like a broken record. It's obvious to me that the board of directors, the people with the real money and the real power, a number of them, which we saw in the front row of Trump's inauguration, have made a decision about this country, and they're going in a different direction. And that some of the very significant policy moves, particularly foreign policy, that we're seeing turn in a different direction are as a result of the extremely powerful people who've decided, we're not going to. It seems to me they've decided there's at least a degree of realism there. For better or for worse, there's a degree of realism that did not exist in the Biden administration on foreign policy. The Biden administration was stuck in a paradigm, and part of it may have been, let's face it, Biden's 800 years old. He was stuck back in the Holy Roman in the Holy Roman Empire, for God's sake, 2,000 years ago. But my point being, they were the world, stuck in, I would say, the main area they were stuck in was the 1990s. In the 1990s, the U.S. was the hyperpower, the unipower. China was extremely poor. Russia was struggling, trying to come out of the end of the Soviet Union, and the U.S. was doing everything they could to smack them, to keep them down even lower in the 90s. And that's where Biden and his crew is stuck. They were stuck in we run the world, and in what was called, you can look this up, the infamous Wolfowitz doctrine. Not the changes that it was made. Don't go to WikiLeaks. You look at the original Wolfowitz doctrine, which was plain and simple. It was, we're the world's hyperpower, and any country that tries to rise to a level to challenge us must be smacked back down to size, right? And that's what they were doing. They were going to control everything in the Middle East, overthrow countries everywhere there, and particularly Eurasia, because they understood that historically a lot of people have believed that he who controls the Eurasian bloc controls the world, and there could be some argument to that. I'm not trying to debate that right now. My point being, so that's where the Biden administration was stuck, still trying to rule the world. Russia has become a very powerful country and a very significant country on the international trade stage, right? That's very important. So everybody needs this stuff. People that don't understand, Russia's the largest country in the world. What is it, 3-4 times the size of the US? It has all of the natural resources that anybody could ever dream of. And you've got China, who has become an industrial giant like the world has never seen. Well, the world has seen that back in the 1950s when the U.S. controlled 40 to 50% of the world's industrial power. But since then, there's been nothing like that. And the U.S. deliberately deindustrialized itself. And China was happy to pick up the mantle and keep on running around the track, right? And they have lapped us on many, many times over. So the Biden administration couldn't handle that. And they were stuck, and they were like, we're going to take Russia down. We're going to take China down. We're going to take everybody down using military, using economics. We got all the power. They couldn't grasp the fact that, old Joe, it ain't just like it used to be. So now in comes Trump. And I think in comes Trump with a group of oligarchs. It's hilarious. We're like the Ukrainian oligarchs, the Russian oligarchs. You could mix all of the Russian and Ukrainian oligarchs together, and they wouldn't have as much money as Jeff Bezos, or they wouldn't have as much money. Need I go on? I mean, I could take any 5 U.S. oligarchs, and any one of them would have more than all of the oligarchs in Russia and Ukraine combined. So it's hilarious how people are so misled about the issue of oligarchy that they see the Russian as run by oligarchs. Although I will say there is a difference, in quite all honesty. The Russian, Ukrainian, a lot of oligarchs in more of the traditional civilizations are physical oligarchs. You know what I mean? If I own aluminum companies and we sell aluminum and I'm worth $3 billion, right? I really am worth $3 billion. However, if I've got some website like Facebook that people are watching, and really, where is the bricks and mortar that's at Facebook? Where are all the things that I'm open? You see what I'm saying? So then it becomes market share. I have a market share of $500 billion. Well, that is all imaginary money and imaginary reality, where the guy in Russia who really has it has an aluminum company, and he actually uses natural resources, and he actually has hard aluminum that he sells. Again, that's why Russia is stronger as a commodity / industrial power, because they're dealing in the real world, hard things that they sell. They sell gas, they sell titanium, they sell real things. And what we do is we come up with imaginary black magic financial tools, such as asset-backed securities, and we sell asset-backed securities, which who really knows what the people that sell them barely know what they are, right? I'm going to take a bunch of student loans and I'm going to chop them up. And then I'm going to say to you, if you buy these chopped up pieces of student loans, these slabs, student loan asset-backed securities, they're worth so much and you'll make so much and you buy them and then everybody buys a piece of them and they're worth something only because everybody buys a piece of them. And then they tell me crypto's a fraud. The whole stock market is crypto. The whole stock market's a fraud. Whereas in a lot of these other countries, they actually, a lot of these other countries, they, actually have actually hard stuff that they're selling. If a aluminum oligarch goes out of business, he can sell his aluminum companies. If Facebook goes down, what's Zuckerberg going to sell, right? But from the perspective of money, they got real power and real money in the real world. So unless the whole system falls apart, then they're still oligarchs. And they got a lot of power. And clearly they've decided to go in another direction. So the foundation of the Trump administration's foreign policy is this. This is the foundation of their foreign policy. We're no longer the world's unipower, the world's hyperpower. And we have to accept that it's a unipolar world and still, in an interesting way, in a paradoxical way, try to dominate that new world. They've come to look, the people that are in power now, I'll give them credit. The Biden administration was just going to get us all killed. Go to war with China, they're going to lose it. Go to war with Russia, they're going to lose it. They have really outclassed us as far as military technology. And we're going to go all the way to China, 7,000 miles away and go to war with China. That wasn't going to work. We were going to lose that. Same with Russia. We're not going to be going to war. We would lose if we tried to go to the border of a superpower and fight that border. And fight them on their border. Our supply line would be all the way back to the United States. Wouldn't work. Wouldn't work at all. So bottom line is, I think these people were at least at minimum wise enough to recognize we'd lose those wars. And so there we go. There's some level of reality, and they're going to try to help. Here's what I think: help set up, help control what the new unipolar order becomes and what our place is in it, as opposed to, which would be more realistic, allow the new unipolar world to form in a more organic way. Wrinkly, God, it's driving me nuts, the wrinkly old tie, but who cares? And ADD, I get distracted. I'm talking all of a sudden, oh wait, look at my tie, right? Look at that shiny thing over there. So, but the bottom line is, so they're still going to try to help set up the multipolar world, and it ain't going to work because the multipolar world's going to set itself up, right? Anyway, Ukraine. Let us start there. That's the big one. And the reason we got to start there is because that's the area that many of us were afraid could lead in the immediacy to some kind of a nuclear conflict, right? Well, a lot of things are coming out, more and more coming out about the Ukraine. And I think that the Biden administration, let me say this. I think that the Biden administration didn't have a plan. And they were just trying to do this, go as far as they could on this. And at some point, it appears to me that the Biden administration was going to turn Europe into Ukraine, right? We're going to fight to the last Ukrainian, and they wanted to drag Europe in and fight to the last Europeans. You know what I mean? They just wanted to keep throwing either Ukrainian, Eastern Europeans, and then eventually Western Europeans into the battle, right? Which at some point it just would have went bad, and we did end up in some kind of a nuclear conflict. I'm convinced of that. It's funny. The sad thing is, here's what's sad about that. If you say to most Americans, we were heading for a nuclear conflict and they were all dead, they'll go, oh God, come on, Garland, you crazy conspiracy theorist people. God, they had no clue. Americans had no clue the direction that we were going. But so I think the oligarchs figured it out. They said, I ain't happening. So now what do we have? Let me say this. People always want to believe that those in power are smart. They're wise. They're tactical and calculating, right? And to some extent, those of us, and I put myself in it, in the conspiracy theory world, right? Because that's what we get called. Me, I'm not so much a conspiracy theorist as some people, but far more than the average person. And I say this about being a conspiracy theorist, as it were. The old saying, just because you're paranoid don't mean people aren't really out to get you. Just because you're coming up with conspiracy theories don't mean they're false. It means that there are conspiracies, and do have and it's okay to have a theory about them. Now, people get whacked out, but that's okay. Because to me, the people who are the quote conspiracy theorists are always already halfway there for this reason, because they are skeptical. They're extremely skeptical. Now, it gets a bit pathological with some people. I know some, but that's okay. I'll put it like this. I'd rather have somebody you're a lot closer if you're skeptical to the system to the point of pathology than someone who just marches around saying, well, I just turned on, they told me to do this and they told me to do that. The government is here to help us. They're looking out for us. They're trying to, make us safe and all this stuff. If you believe that, you're done. But if you're a conspiracy theorist to the highest order and you believe all kinds of crazy shit, you're still halfway there. At least you're skeptical. At minimum, you're skeptical of the government, and you'll get some things really, really right. Okay, so one of the problems is this. And this is, again, a paradox. This is in a contradiction, maybe a better word. And that is in people who believe that the people who believe that the ruling elite have everything planned out. Everything they do is a plan. Oh yeah, they're going to do this. Then they want to do that. Then they're going to do that. And everything happens. Everything that happens with the ruling elite, they say it's part of their plan. Well, this happened. Yeah, that's part of their plan. Next, they're going to do this. What they're doing is, in a way, they have it in their minds that these brilliant, these powerful and rich people and ruling elite are geniuses. They're geniuses on an order that you could never imagine, and they've got everything planned, and everything that happens is part of their plan, and everything they do is part of their plan. And they're so much smarter than us, and they're so sharp, and they got everything under control, and they're so wise. Now they're evil and devious, but they're really, 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 really smart. That's the odd contradiction of some conspiracy theorists. At the same time, you recognize how screwed up they are, but you still want to believe that they're brilliant, which means nothing can be organic. Nothing could possibly ever happen where they just screw up and do stupid things. Believe it as you want. I've been around some really powerful, really rich people in my day. And trust me when I tell you this, they weren't geniuses. Trust me when I tell you this. They didn't have oftentimes as good a grip on reality, as good a grip on things as we do. So let's not overestimate the intellect and capabilities of the people in power. Oftentimes they're schmucks, they're morons, they're idiots, and they stumble and bumble their way into power because they got their money and power the old-fashioned way. They were born into it or they married into it. And now you think that everything that happens, it's part of their plan. Oh, no, they're not that smart. Don't give them more credit than they deserve. Okay, so Ukraine. One thing is becoming very, very obvious to me, right? And that is this. Trump don't have a plan, and he never had a plan. Now, being a man who studies Zen, that ain't something that I'm necessarily opposed. I went to a Super Bowl party yesterday, and my niece made, I don't eat meat, I eat seafood, right? And they always make a nice, some nice seafood for me. And anyway, my niece had baked this salmon, and she goes, Uncle Garland, I could bake this salmon and I hope you like it. And my sister was like, it turned out really, really well. It's great. And she says, but I don't remember how long I cooked it. And I don't remember what the temperature was. And I'm like, that's why it's so good. She's like, what do you mean? I said, you forgot I studied Zen. The fact that you don't know how you made it, that you don't remember what the temperature was or how long, they said it was supposed to be 250 at so many minutes, but I think I had it higher or low. I don't remember. And I said, that's why it's so good. If you went by the recipe and you had a detailed recipe, it tastes like crap. How many times have you cooked something that you couldn't remember what it was and it was fantastic and delicious, right? I talked to her about the old art of pottery making in China and Japan, the old Zen art where you take a black tea kettle and you throw it down and you break it. And then you take it up and you fill all the cracks. You put it back together like a puzzle and you fill all the cracks with silver or gold. And it's beautiful and it's a piece of art. And you can never make twice because you threw it down and it cracks and you filled the cracks, right? You don't know how it was going to crack. And you had the most beautiful, that's some of the most beautiful art you could imagine. It's accidental art, right? So my point is, Trump ain't got a plan. None of them got a plan. They don't know what the hell they're doing. And if you're a person who's like, Trump's playing 7D chess on this, first of all, he's trying to fool Putin with this. Then he's going to set this up. Then, and they're like plans, like Trump's sitting around. You know how it is. He's got a pin behind his ear. He's got a pocket protector on. He's got all the people around. He's like, all right, here, what do you think this? I've got a formula and calculations. And it's like a chalkboard in a physics class. Oh, there's all these different signs and stuff. And Trump presents the plan and everybody stands up and claps. That's a brilliant plan. And he bows and they all high five and off he goes to use no. Trump's plan is Monday. Hey, I think I'm going to put something on Truth Social that may or may not be related to Ukraine. See, here's what you got to understand. If Trump says Ukraine, it has to be related to Ukraine. Yes. Yeah, we need the minerals. And they're like, oh, Trump wants the minerals of Ukraine and the important metals and things like that. And I'm with Alexander Mercouris. The Chinese said, hey, you guys are putting tariffs. We'll stop selling you these precious metals. And then minerals, rare earth minerals, whatever the hell they are. They're rare. That we know of. So Trump gets pissed. Oh, yeah? You're not going to sell us rare earth metals? I'll fix you, you bastard Jew. And then he puts on Truth Social. We need to get the rare earth metals of Ukraine, right? Now, he was pissed at the Chinese, and he's kind of bratty, and he was pushing back. But we have to evaluate exactly what he said. Oh, what do you think that means? Trump now, it's transactional. It's this, it's that. Everything's transactional with Trump. And I think he was pissed off at the Chinese. But we've got to interpret it. Trump's brilliant, but he's evil, but he's devious. Trump's stumbling, tripping, and falling like he's walking down a hall on banana peels. But for us, he's got to be a brilliant genius with some brilliant scheme. Yeah, I don't think Trump's quite there, right? So then the next day, he's like, this is a good one. It appears to me that Trump spoke with Putin or something at some point, and it was supposed to be a black call, as they say. Nobody was supposed to know. And so Trump's like, hey, what's happening, Putin? What do you got? Well, we want to get out of Ukraine. Yeah, pain in the ass, isn't it? What do you think we ought to do? We'll trade you this. We'll trade you that. We'll come up with a plan. And you're out. Okay, sounds like a winner. Talk to you later. Have a nice day. He hangs up. And the Russians are like, yes, sir. We had a back channel meeting, discussion between Putin and Ukraine. Shh. Nobody say a word. It's not going to go in TASS, RT. Nobody say ixnay with the tray. We say nothing. And then Trump gets on. As soon as a mic gets in front of his fat puss, he's like, yeah, talked to Putin today, and we had a good old chat, man. It was nice. It was awesome. It was great. I talked to Putin a good bit. I can't tell you just, he loves to brag. Talk to him. Can't tell you how much, but we've chatted, we've talked, we've had fun. Me and whole Vlad, man. That's my boy, man. He's my crew. We were talking. It was fun. We'll get this thing done. Right? And the Russians are like, what the heck? What? It was supposed to be a black meeting. Nobody was supposed to know it happened. We were told, we talked, everyone would be cool. Bad news, Russians. That's the hand you got. You got to figure out how to play it now. That's old Trumpy, right? Oh, by the way, I see some people are clicking on the join button. Hey, join, become a member. It only costs a couple bucks. So please become a member of the channel. Thank you, Joy, and everyone. Joy, hey, that's the Kamala Harris slogan. Joy. I don't think they're as joyous as they used to be. Anyway, meanwhile, I think one of the things we're finding out also with Ukraine, and I'll throw this in, is the Brits were knee deep in this stuff, which is interesting, right? The BRICS were behind like the Kursk incursion and the Crinky disaster. I mean, the worst disasters of the war, where Ukrainians just got wiped out like cordwood, wiped out like cannon fire. I mean, just obliterated, annihilated, where the Russians were like in Crinky, where the Russians were like, really? You guys just keep trying to take this beachhead. All right, artillery man, do your work. Artillery comes in, tears everybody to pieces, and the Russians were like, oh, it won't be stupid enough to do that. Holy crap! There's another 1,000 Ukrainians heading for the creaky beach, trying to establish a beachhead. All right, artillery man, do your thing. Artillery comes in, tears them to pieces. And the Russians, I think, were just shocked. I think the Russians were like, do you believe that, like, we got everything squared out, mapped out here with artillery, and these clowns just keep marching up to the beachhead to be killed? What the hell, right? And I think they were shocked. Well, we find out that the British were behind that. We find out that the British were behind the Kursk thing. And one of the things, to show you how screwed up they are, the British leaders are, one of the things that has come out recently is that apparently the British were celebrating, if you remember, they were celebrating the use of Challenger tanks, which didn't work out real well for Challenger tanks in Kursk, right? Yes, we're sending Challenger tanks into Kursk. And the Russians like, okay, well, they'll burn like firewood. Boom, boom, boom. They blew all of the Challenger tanks to smithereens, right? And we're like, yeah, that wasn't real bright. But here's my point. Apparently, the British were doing that because they were trying to normalize the reality of Westerners involved directly in the conflict. They got like 11 people. You know what I mean? The British military is a joke. The British military is non-existent, right? They're done. They have no military of consequence. But for some reason, they're like, yes, we got to make sure we let everybody know what it's like to fight the Russians. Apparently, the British were at the knife's edge of this thing. They were the leading edge of this thing, right? They were like, we got to go. We got to take them. We got to fight the Russians. Let's go. The Brits, with like the economy of, I don't know, a small neighborhood on the outskirts of Baltimore City, and just pretty much about the fighting, the fighting ability of a small neighborhood on the outskirts of Baltimore City, right? And not much to the Brits, but they were all mouth. What does it say? What's the old saying go? An alligator mouth and a Tweety bird ass, right? That's pretty much the Brits. But they're pushing up against the Russians. As long as the Ukrainians are getting blown to smithereens, oh, they ain't your friends, Ukraine. So anyway, so now as people work to evaluate what Donald Trump's brilliant plan for Ukraine is, at least I'll give him this. He might have some success in the same way that my niece made a delicious salmon. There was green stuff on it. I'm not sure what it was. It might have been parsley, but it was really exceptional salmon. I mean, you get a fork anywhere near this piece of salmon, it whoop, right to the bottom. You ever have a piece of cake where you go to touch it with the fork and the fork just goes right to the bottom? You're like, oh God, I'm in trouble. I'm going to eat 3 pieces of this German chocolate cake, and I know I shouldn't be doing it, right? That was the salmon. Unbelievable salmon. So my point being this, just because Trump is stumbling and bumbling through here and he has no plan doesn't mean that it won't work. See, that's the traditional belief of Western scientific thought, right? Everything has to be mapped out. Get up in the morning, plan your day to the nth degree, right? Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly effective people, breaking big rocks into little rocks, right? Everything, when you get up, you know what you're going to do. The same thing every morning. You get up, you exercise the same way every morning, the same place. You come back, you have the same thing for breakfast. You get up, you do boom, and everything, your day is scheduled out, and what you're going to do next is scheduled out, and you're going to be successful, and you're going to have benchmarks. All this scientific Western way of thinking, as opposed to stumbling along and allowing life to happen, right? So my point being, sometimes, think about this. Trump ain't Stephen Hawking in any stretch of the imagination. Now, I'll say this. You err if you over or underestimate Trump. If you think he's a genius, he ain't a genius. If you think he's an idiot, Trump's a dumbass. You're wrong. Trump is not an idiot. He's a genius. Trump seems to me like he's a fairly smart guy. He's not stupid, but Trump is inhibited by he's got I'll be blunt with it. I think Donald Trump, to some extent, based on his childhood, has a paradigm of power that does not serve him well. The paradigm of power is there's the strong and the weak. You've heard that. How does that go? And the street do, and the strong do what they can, and the weak suffer what they must. I think that's the way Donald Trump views the world. You're either the strong guy or the weak guy. You're either right or wrong. You're good or bad, right? Kind of like Democratic Party sees things that way. You're either with us or you're with the terrorist, right? But my point is, Donald Trump, to me, I think he sees Vladimir Putin as a strong guy. And I think he likes that about Vladimir Putin. And the fact of the matter, if you look at Vladimir Putin, he's a smart guy. He's incredibly educated. And he is. I mean, look what he's done for Russia. Those who don't know anything about Russia will be like, oh, he's an evil dictator, blah, blah, blah. How the hell does an evil dictator get 87% of the vote? Not cheating. The United States predicted he would get 86% of the vote, and he got 87. That was our prediction. That was our poll said 86% of the vote, and he got 87%. If you know anything about Russia, he's one of the most beloved, supported leaders by his people on the face of this earth. He's a smart guy, and he's a easygoing, but the man's a black belt. You wouldn't want to grab him, probably get your ass kicked. Okay. So my point is, I think Trump intuitively understands that Putin's a strong, determined guy. And I think he respects that. So he has respect for Putin. I don't think he respects weak people. I think he hates Macron and those kind of people because he does see them weak. I think Donald Trump has a good intuition as far as strong people and weak people. I really do there. But at any rate, because he only understands strong versus weak, everything he does is, how do you get someone to do something, right? How do you influence people? We deal with that in life all the time. How do we influence other people? How do we lobby? I had a friend that was a lobbyist, and she used to talk about, she says, we're constantly lobbying. Guy goes into a bar, he sees a girl, he wants to meet a girl in a bar, and young man, he goes into a bar, what is he doing? He's lobbying to her. Hi, how are you? And she looks at him, she thinks, okay, he's all right. Hi. And he's lobbying all the time. My name's Garland, Joe, Bill, Blow, whatever. Oh, really? Yo, what's your name? Kathy. Tell me a bit about yourself, whatever, Joe Blow. And he's going to lobby. He's going to say, well, I like this or that, or he's going to say things that, try to make himself look good or what have you. And he's going to lobby. And his paradigm's going to come out as to how he sees, how should he influence her, right? Now, there are some guys. If you're a Donald Trump, you're going to influence with power. I have money. I'm rich. There's some people it'll work for. I'm in charge of big corporations. I'm this, I'm that. Your paradigm is one of power. Power impresses other people. Weakness runs people away. Clearly, if you watch Donald Trump, his paradigm is power impresses people. You want to be power. And as they say, the same thing that'll make you laugh will make you cry. Your biggest strength is your biggest weakness. So in the instance of foreign policy, Donald Trump only sees it through the lens of, we're a big, strong, powerful country. Therefore, if we want to influence other countries, there's only one way to do it. We're not going to talk with them. We're not going to accept that they have equal concerns. We're going to bully them. We're going to push them around and make them do what we want because we're bigger and stronger than they are, right? And here's the problem. In a unipolar world, that don't work. In a multipolar world, that doesn't work. Because you're not just talking to that country, you're talking to that country and its allies. And in a multipolar world, a small country may have a lot of big, strong allies. So you can go push that kid around on the parking lot. I'll take your lunch. And his three brothers walk up and they're all 3 times your size. And they say, you touch my brother, or you say anything to him again, we'll kick your ass. And he's like, what? Ooh, perhaps I was a little out of line with that because it's about lunch. But here, take my lunch money, right? Okay. So that's the problem. You can't take people's lunch money just because they're a small country or a small group in a multipolar world, because they got big friends. They got big, strong friends that are there with them. Iran, you really want to go? Iran now is aligned with Russia and China, but Russia's giving them all kinds of Su-35s and S-500s and God only knows what else. It ain't going to be easy. They ain't easy out now. You don't want that fight. You don't want that smoke, as they say, right? You didn't want it before. And now, especially, you don't want it. Now they're like, we're going to put maximum pressure on Iran. You think Iran and Russia and China didn't already expect that? You think they don't have psychological profiles of you, Donald Trump? They do. You think they don't remember what you did? They do. And why did Russia and Iran sign a deal of, a common military and economic and diplomatic deal alliance just before Trump came in? Because they knew Trump would likely revert back to this maximum pressure on Iran. And they wanted to make sure that the beachhead of Iran is a beachhead for Russia and China. It's very, very important for the two of them. It's a powerful regional player, and they got to maintain it. And their plans were, you're going to try to take Trump, Iran out, and we're going to make sure Iran's strong enough that it can stand up. So that's what they're doing, and it'll work. But bottom line is, so now with no plans in Ukraine whatsoever, Donald Trump's going to stumble forward. And look, I'm not going to predict that he may not be successful. Yeah, a lot of people would say he has no plan, he has to fail. Well, you know what? As I've often said, in one of my favorite B kind of movies, Tremors, it was funny. It's a kind of a B movie, but it's really hilarious. And the two stars have a plan, and they're going to do this and that, and then the monsters come after them, and the monsters are able to thwart their plans. And one guy says, "What's the plan?" And the other guy says, "Run!" And they start running. He looks at him and says, "Running ain't a plan. Running is what you do when a plan don't work, right?" But they still survived. So even though running wasn't a plan, and running was what they did when the plan didn't work, running still worked, and probably better than the plan they had, right? It appears to me that the Trump and people are like, the Trump wants out. Trump wants a deal because he'll look real damn good if he gets a deal. He will look good if he gets a deal. I don't know if he can get a deal. Maybe, who God only knows who. Maybe he will. I wouldn't put it past him if he bumbles and stumbles into a deal, kind of like Inspector Gadget. Remember, he had a dog and a girl with him, and he would always try to solve the mystery or whatever it is, and he'd screw up, and the dog and the girl would always solve the mystery, and he would get the credit for it. Could be Trump. Trump could very well, with no plan whatsoever, stumble, trip, fall, and bumble, and get a plan and accidentally resolve the Ukraine conflict. But I think there's a greater likelihood that something else happens. I think there's a greater likelihood that while running ain't a plan, and running's what you do when a plan don't work, running can end up being better than the original plan if you had one. And it's damn sure better than no plan at all, right? So here's my point. Running would be ultimately Donald Trump saying, look, I got it. This is the deal I got with Russia. Russia says they're willing to take this. I don't give a crap personally myself. So Zelensky, there you go. Europeans, I think that's a great plan. Let's all sign on to it. Of course, the Europeans, the Brits, and the bear box, and all of these. Oh, boy, I've never been so insulted in my life that we cannot cow down to the evil Putin. Why? We must stand up and fight. No, we got nothing to fight with. We must stand up and fight. At that point where running it becomes the plan, and Trump says, well, I kind of had a funny feeling you might go in that direction. Toodles will be out. You guys go ahead and arm them. If you want to send some, whatever you want to do is between you and the Russians. We sat down and talked with the Russians. We came up with something that we're willing to sign up on. The Russians are willing to sign on it. The Ukraine's not, you're not. So if we can't get that kind of a deal, we'll be over here doing our thing. We got bigger fish to fry, and off he goes. And I have a feeling, I put it in an elaborate manner, but I think there are a lot of other people that feel the same way. That's how I see things going. We shall see. Now let's move on to Gaza. Look, Donald Trump understands the dynamics of power in the U.S., and he understands that from the ruling elite. He was in New York, right? He was in New York. He's done real estate in New York. He understands the dynamics of Zionist power, right? And Donald Trump, first and foremost, respects power. So he respects the Zionists because they have power. And so I think I will say this. Donald Trump does not want to drag the U.S. into any wars. It's clear. He doesn't want to be bombing Lebanon, bombing anybody. He doesn't want the U.S. to have their hands on a war. That's clear. He wants out of that stuff. And I think the ruling elite, not just he does, he fits with the ruling elite because the ruling elite don't want war. They don't want bombing. They don't want shooting. They want out of that crap, right? And I think he understands that Israel is very, very important to the U.S. imperial project, but it ain't the only thing. Right? It doesn't have, I'll put it like this. If they have decided, as it appears, to be a bit more of a super regional power instead of a unipolar, world hegemon. I think they want to be a hyper regional power. Here's what I mean. If they could divide the world into three spheres of influence, China, Russia, and the US, but there would still be a hierarchy there where the US would be the most powerful of the regional powers, and the other two would be different types, in that China's an economic and Russia's a military slash economic power, right? Diplomatic power. They got a lot of things going for them in Russia. And I think what they would like to be is a regional power where all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than other, right? Okay, it's a unipolar world, but we still have a hierarchy. And the problem with that is that that's not a true unipolar world. And that ain't what the Chinese and the Russians want, or the Indians. The Chinese and the Russians want a world where it's truly a unipolar world and everybody looks out for their own interest, right? Everybody's about WIIFM, what's in it for me? So when you get to Gaza, and I add this, and I think from the perspective of the Russians and Chinese, I think there is a moral part of their position there, right? Because here's the thing: the Russians and the Chinese are big on international law, and I think they see violations of international law, and I think they see what's going on in the region as a threat to international law, and they don't like that threat to international law. They want things to be stable, and they're more to stability. Russia, China, more into stable politics and stability, and I think they see the threats to international law in the Middle East as threats to stability in the Middle East and threats to a stable international law. They want that mess cleaned up, and they want it cleaned up via international law, international rules that everybody has to abide by. And the U.S. still wants to be, well, we'll be a hyper regional power and blah, 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 but we'll still be able to say whatever happens, determine the outcome in the Middle East. So you still want the authority of a hegemonic world power, but while admitting that you're not getting contradictions, right? And here's the deal on Gaza also, and here's the question mark on Gaza. I think the question mark on Gaza is something like this. Early in the conflict, as you know, I have Latham Roof and various people that I interview. And the question, here's the question: who decides the final outcome? See, that's the question. Does the United States / Israel finally determine this is how it's going to end, this is what's going to happen, this is who goes where, this is who lives here, this is who gets this property? Because if the U.S. is able to do that, then it's still a hegemonic presence in the region, right? Or do the Muslim countries? Now, keep in mind, there are Muslim countries, the Gulf states, the more Sunni-run Gulf states, traditional monarchies, right? That are aligned deeply with the U.S. Some may refer to them in some manners as vassals, but in some ways they are, in some ways they aren't. In some ways they really are. In some ways they kind of can't. They have some things they have to do on their own. But here's my point. My point is, even the Gulf states, who are very much aligned with the U.S. and who their leaders don't give a crap, to be quite frank, their leaders don't give a crap about the Palestinians. They still have to face the reality that the people on the street do, and that instability, an unstable end, and an end to this conflict that's unjust to the Palestinians will destabilize the region and destabilize internally. Some of them know, MBS, the Mohammed bin Salman, the leader, or whatever you want to call him, the prince and actually acting king, I guess, of Saudi Arabia, very early in the conflict, said, hey, this thing could get me killed. They understand that if they go in the wrong direction, they could face some kind of an uprising. That's a very real concern, right? So the issue is for the Gulf states, for the traditional Sunni states, unfortunately, sadly, it has nothing to do with justice for the Palestinians. It has to do with internal stability in their countries and with reasserting their right to determine the outcome. And again, they got to deal with the Shiite countries who are actually aligned, both, I would argue, morally and religiously in a lot of ways. And I don't mean necessarily that there's not any Sunni Palestinians, but I mean that their religious beliefs, from their perspective, requires them to stand up for the Palestinians, right? So you have some dynamics here where you've got a Shia bloc who is standing for the Palestinians, standing up for the Palestinians, no matter what. And you have a Sunni bloc where even the people in the streets, the man and woman on the street, stand for the Palestinians. And while their leaders don't, they still got to deal with the man and woman on the street. So they're playing a dangerous game, right? They're playing a tough game and a dangerous game. But whatever the case may be, I think the question becomes who decides how this ends. And as Trump blabbles on things, he talks to Netanyahu and it's like, oh, we'll take over Gaza. We'll move the Gazans out. You know, it works like this. We'll move them out until we get the place cleaned up. You know, hey, it's like you have a fire and water damage at your house. You go stand in a hotel and, you know, or an apartment until it gets fixed and you move back in. So Trump's they'll try to pretend that it's something like that, but everybody knows what Netanyahu's game plan will be. Everybody knows that if Netanyahu is ever able to get the Palestinians out, that he is never going to open the door for them to get back in. The Palestinians know it. Everybody knows it. So the fact of the matter is, no matter how much Trump says that ain't happening, because it would destabilize the region, and the Sunni leaders would be in danger of getting a haircut that goes all the way down to their necktie, and they damn know it, and they ain't going to go out like that. I would be a charlatan if I said I know how this ends, or I have any clue in the world how this ends. I do not have enough understanding of the Middle East. I don't have the in-depth understanding of the Middle East to determine how this is going to end. But all this business with Trump about you know, we'll move the Palestinians out, and this is going to be we'll rebuild it like some kind of there's going to be shopping malls and swimming pools and water parks and stuff like that for everybody to come. Oh boy, it's going to be Disneyland in the Middle East. That's a pipe dream, simply because the people who live in the Middle East, the rulers who live in the Middle East, have to survive in the Middle East, and they know they can't get away with that. Let's not forget, what do the Saudis keep saying? The Saudis keep saying, look, we got to have it too. If you want us to normalize with Israel, which they do, which I think BlackRock wants them to, which the big money wants them to do, as Shahid Bosen calls them, the OCGFC, the owners and controllers of globalized financial capitalism, want that to happen. If I think that the Saudis have to stand strong, they got to stand pat. No, you ain't getting the Palestinians out. And it would just be too destructive to the region. A lot of leaders know they wouldn't get out of this alive if that happened. They're not going to let that happen. So I don't believe it's going to happen. Now, I ain't saying that I know everything, because I don't know much, but I don't see it happening. A lot of people feel as though Trump is sending all of these bombs over to the Israelis so they can just start attacking again. In theory, that could happen. So I could be wrong on this. So I'll give you my evaluation of what I think is going on with Trump rearming Israel. I think Israel's out of arms. They bombed, they've shot, they've running out of stuff. I think when they stopped, fighting, I think they had no choice, because I think they were out of fighting spirit. They were hurting economically. They were running out of missiles. They were taking a beating on the battlefield. And I just don't think they could keep fighting. And so it's like, oh, darn, Trump stopped us from fighting. But I don't think they were in much of a position to continue fighting, if you really want the truth. I think they took a licking pretty good, and they weren't ticking like a time bomb, right? And I think what happened is this: in the same way, I used to be a law enforcement officer, right? And what do? I fire, on a range. I fire my weapons. I empty my round. Pop, 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 pop. And then what do? Drop the chamber, put in another one. I'm ready to go. Am I going to stand there with an empty, no magazine? No. As soon as I run out, I'm going to drop my magazine, rack another magazine, and I'm ready to fire again. I'm on a range, boom, another boom, another one, boom, another one, right? You keep firing magazine after magazine, right? Okay. I think the Israelis had an empty magazine. And I think a big part of What's going on now is they're rearming them because Israel is a U.S. military outpost in the Middle East, and you don't want to have a U.S. military outpost and ain't got no bombs or guns or nothing. Their magazine was empty, and it's possible they're just refilling their magazine. Now, how that works out, I don't know, but we will see. And we can all pray, hope, whatever you do, meditate for um, the Palestinians, and of course, all the people who have been attacked and things of that nature in the Middle East by Israel and the U.S. We can support them as best we can, and all we can do is see what turns out. Syria is interesting because Trump's getting the hell out. He's getting out of Syria and Iraq. I'm pretty sure of that. He's out. He's getting out of there. And my understanding, as far as I'm reading, is that Trump says I want out. I expect that Trump wants a deal in on the Korean Peninsula, and he wants to get our troops the heck out of there. And I say Trump. What I mean is the ruling elite, the people in power, the real people who make decisions have made a decision. We're going to be a regional hyperpower as opposed to the world power. They have recognized that we aren't, and they want to be a regional hyperpower. In order to be a regional hyperpower, you got to get all them troops to hell home. One of the things that would work with this is this, and I think this is a possibility. We shall see. That in Europe, one of the things the Russians are going to want is to get NATO the hell off their border. Why are you surrounding Russia with bases? Why you surround us with bases? We want some of these bases closed and get you off our border. That would align with the ruling elite's move to become a regional hyperpower, right? We'll close some of those bases there. We'll bring the troops home. I think they're going to put them on the border of Mexico. They'll put bases there. I think they'll build them around this area, but I think it's going to be they will have no problemo closing some of the European bases because they want out of Europe anyway. Trump hates the Europeans. The ruling elite doesn't like the Europeans. Over here, a lot of the new ones, the new libertarian tech bros. So we'll see. We will see. All of those things as we shall see. It's only been 20 days, so don't beat me up too bad for not giving you a final outcome. What's going to happen with Trump within 20 days? 20 days. It seems like 20 years because, boy, the salvos of things are flying, but we shall see. But next, let's talk about Doge for just a little bit. And that's the libertarian tech bros. The libertarian tech bros are like, look, they're corporate guys. They're looking at the U.S. saying, and I think that Musk gave the game away a while back where he said, we're going broke, we're 37 trillion in debt, we're going to go bankrupt. The libertarian tech bros, what do you do if you have a corporation and the corporation is in trouble, right? Either you borrow a bunch of money, you sell it, you do something, or you restructure. They're going to restructure, but they're going to restructure in the image of the libertarian tech bros, which means you make the government a lot smaller because libertarians believe in small government, and you're going to weaken the government. And here's why it makes sense for the ruling elite and the libertarian tech bros. Let's just say you've got X amount of power that the government has. The less power the government has, the more power the corporations have. The more you disempower the government, the more you strengthen the corporations and their CEOs of corporations, and they'll be stronger. They'll have greater say in things. So what they're going to do is working on weakening the government and strengthening their corporate power. They deliberately targeted USAID. And the reason they had to target USAID was because they knew that was narrative control. They knew that when they went after whatever they went after, that USAID was narrative control, and it had an octopus of online attack dogs from one end of this world, from the North Pole to the South Pole, and they knew that they had to go at that and shut it down and slam it. They went after it. Ain't an accident that 5-6 days into, less than 10 days at least, into Trump's presidency, the richest man in the world brought his people in and said, we're taking down USAID and we're going to tear it to shreds. Now he's saying, get rid of Voice of America, get rid of Radio Free Europe. That's the whole narrative control thing. It's obvious they're tearing that thing to shreds because they know if they're going to do a corporate restructure, who would push back? the narrative machine. They're going to wipe the narrative machine out so that there's nobody pushing back against their corporate restructure. And might I add this, if you're not going to be the world hegemon, if you're going to be a regional hyperpower, you don't need the narrative control thing. And they don't like the narrative. So the people who are coming to power now are going to go within a different direction, and it is what it is. You can like it, I can like it, we can hate it, whatever. They've decided what they're going to do, and they got the money, the power, and power to do it, and ain't nobody stopping them from doing it. It's going to happen. Evaluate it, try to figure it out. But that's that. Yeah, somebody said cut all social programs. Oh yeah, the libertarian tech bros, the libertarian mentality is get rid of social programs and empower people to the starving, hungry, homeless people to do things on their own. It's a twisted bit of mentality that I see as contradictory. But so what we have to do is we got to do less for the poor because that'll help them, and we've got to give more great tax cuts for the rich. So the less you do for the poor, the more it helps them. The more you do for the rich, the more it helps us all. Isn't that a self-serving pile of crap racket, right? But it is what it is. And that's what we're facing now. Like it, don't like it, that's the direction that we're going. I do believe the one part of their plan that will attract people is at some point, massive tax cuts for everybody's coming. There's no question about that, how they're going to do it, when they're going to do it, but they're going to do massive tax cuts for people. But with all it, and people will be smiling from ear to ear when they do their massive tax cuts. Yeah, but it ain't all going to be good. So we will see. Again, we'll see what happens, and we will, we got to look. Bottom line is, and the strong do what they can. However it goes, and the strong was and the strong do what they must, and the weak suffer. Or is it the strong do what they can, and the weak suffer what they must? However that old thing goes, I'm sure somebody will look it up, right? But we'll suffer what we must. But at any rate, I'm just trying to evaluate it. It is what it is. Here's the way I look at it. And there was a movie, The Last Starfighter, and it was, I loved it. You know, it was a B movie as far as sci-fi goes. But one part of it that I loved, and that was the captain of this ship was, you know, he was at the helm, and his two helmsmen were running the starship, and they looked at him and they said, "Captain, the helm is not responding, and we're caught in the planet's gravitational pull. What do we do?" And he stopped. He had this one little monocle, and that popped down. He looks at him and he says, "We die." It was the reality. It was, look, what do we do? Look around, dude. What are you asking me a stupid question for that, like that? Hey, we're in this gigantic starship. We can't control it, and we're being sucked in by the gravity of this planet. What do you, come on, let's not be stupid. We're going to die. Let's not pretend like something else is going to happen. There ain't a whole lot of options other than that. This is the way it is, right? And there's certain times when people have to look and say it is what it is, like it or not like it. Well, guess what? The tech bros got the money, the tech bros got the power, and this is what they're going to do. And it don't matter if you like it or not. And it doesn't matter if I like it or not. We will have to deal with it. We will have to live through this corporate CEO restructure. The board of directors of the United States have made a decision, and you and me are going along for the ride. Let me add one last thing. God knows I don't want to, but let's talk about the Democrats. The Democratic Party now, you know, I heard a caller on my radio show in DC the other day, and he said, yes, from the looks of things, we're only going to have to sit around and wait because Trump's going to screw things up so much. So that's the option. That's the only thing they can do now. They are feckless. They're pathetic. They're a sad group of people. They don't have a plan either. They can't even run because they got nowhere to run to. So they have, oddly enough, interestingly enough, they have decided to champion causes, some of which 80% of Americans oppose. Why would you pick something that's 80-20 and you're on the 20% side? Because they have taken these moral positions, that they've got the moral high ground. As an example, the issue of trans people in sports. Look, I don't care what you think about it. Doesn't matter to me what you think about it. There are polls that show that 80% of Americans are opposed to it. Tremendous percent. Various polls. Pick which poll you want. Here's the bottom line. You ain't going to find much of a poll, unless maybe it's in Hollywood or New York City, where there isn't it's lopsided. Most Americans are like, you know, if I see a person was formerly a male interacting with women and with, you know, women who were born a female in sports and he's winning by a dramatic level, I don't think that's fair. That's reality. Like it, disagree, don't matter. That's it. Why would you pick the side of the people who are on the losing side? Well, that's what the Democrats have done on issue after issue. Democrats, I'm going to do a video on this. The Democrats are like the liberals are like the worst thing that could happen to like minorities, black people and gay people and all. The liberals are the worst. You start to understand why Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and all of these brilliant black minds, at some point always come to the same conclusion. Martin Luther King ended up saying, basically, the white liberal is our biggest problem. It isn't that they're evil. It isn't that they're bad, but it's just that their view of the world is so screwed up. They end up creating a paradigm in which the minorities get screwed worse because of the plans of the liberal. They're always coming up with something like, for instance, DEI. DEI for the white liberals that's it, man. It's everything. And they have to convince black people that DEI is what it's about. To me, I interpret DEI as, to be quite frank, this is the way I see DEI. When I turn on a commercial and there's a black person, there's a black female and a white male and a gay person and an Asian person and a fat person. And that's DEI. The appearance of fairness, the appearance that everything is fair and everybody's being treated the same, as opposed to the reality of it. We're going to make it look like it. We're concerned with how things look, not compared with how things are. So it's like, we are going to make sure, and look at the results. Hollywood, how they're working in Hollywood. They're making these movies with the strong woman. Every single one. A woman is in charge. She's the chief of police. She's the president. She's the mayor. She's the investigator. She leads the SWAT team. She punches a man and just one little nick and he's passed out and he's crushed. She beats up 10 guys. A woman who's 5'1" and 84 pounds beats up 10 Navy SEALs, right? Okay, sure, whatever, but people ain't going to see the movie, okay? And so that's my view of DEI. It is a falsehood. I could give you stories about my dealings with it, and particularly with Open Society Institute, the Soros people. But for now, that would be too long. So my point is this. So they come up with this fraudulent view where all we got to do is every chewing gum stinking commercial has one black person, one white person, one Asian person, one, and it does nothing to help the poor guy on the street. How? DEI more often is, we've got to put more black females in the corporate bedrooms. Well, in the corporate, what do you call it, boardrooms, right? How does that help the poor black guy on the street who needs healthcare, who maybe didn't get a fair shot with a decent education because his schools were broken down and impoverished, and maybe he gets a better education? Or the poor people who need, of all races, who need help get with addiction counseling and education. How does that? It doesn't. It's not meant to. Ultimately, DEI usually is putting more people in the boardrooms, or, oh, we're going to make a Disney movie and it's going to be females, strong leading females who already are in Hollywood making 10 million a year. Now they're going to make 12 million, 15 million, and they're going to be the lead role in a movie that nobody's going to go to see. Let's face it. Before this DEI, when the office opened in 2021, you had all kinds of laws for EEOC laws. There were laws that if a person felt like they were discriminated against, they could file complaints on the job, an EEOC complaint, whatever. There was, wait, man, if DEI just pops in, and now every stinking commercial I look at, two guys kissing because we got to have gay people, and then there's the Asian guy running with his black wife and a daughter that looks like she's not related to either one of them. I got to look at that crap and I got to think, oh boy, hey, the world's going better because of chewing gum commercial. More often than not, it's like a Pfizer commercial. They got some ungodly pill that I watch all of this diversity on the advertisement, and they get to the end. Oh yes, taking this may cause your penis to fall off. Your toes will turn blue and your hair will all turn into snakes and turn all your friends into rocks immediately. That's the end of the commercial. And I'm like, well, it was lovely that you had a diverse commercial, but anybody that takes this crap is going to die, and everybody around them. No thanks, right? That's what we're looking at. So, and then what happens? And then what ultimately happens when the liberals got to help out the poor little minorities that just need so much help? What ends up happening? When it's all said, you get the whiplash effect. So what happens? People who want to do away with the discrimination laws that already exist, that were there and everybody could live with them and people could use them if they needed and things of that nature and go to court and see what happens. They were there and had been there since the 60s, most of them. Court precedents had come up. Things were fairly stable as to discrimination in the workplace and things, how that would be dealt with. That was fairly stable. Whether it worked or not, we can argue, but the infrastructure and mechanisms for dealing with those things in our society, on the job or whatever, existed. People were there with them. Okay. Well, now the people who oppose those things will now say, we got to get rid of DEI. And what will they do? They will use the absurdity of the DEI making the strong leading woman in every friggin' Marvel hero story, super person story. And they will use that to disassemble the infrastructure that people could use in the EEOC and other things. They'll use those to disassemble all the stuff that they didn't like that was already there. So thanks to these liberals who are coming up with this great plan to help the poor little minorities, the infrastructure and legal infrastructure that existed that minorities could use to legally address that white folk people weren't like, we've got to get rid of EOC. Whether you liked it or not, there was some, but they couldn't. Overall, people accepted this is where we are. Okay. Now, the people that want to get rid of that stuff are going to use the preposterousness of the DEI stuff to get rid of all of it, to wipe out all of it. And ultimately, the minorities will be hurt worse than if they hadn't gone along with this crap in the first place. That's number one. Number two, gay people. I don't know why the Democratic Party became hypersexualized. Why do we have to talk about somebody's sexual preferences, which turned into sexual orientations, which turns into sexual? Let's get rid of the word sex. Why are we always talking about the Democratic Party decided everything was about sex? Hey, what are we going to talk about? Well, what's somebody's sexual preferences? I don't like that word. Okay, we'll call it sexual orientation. Are they a man? Are they a woman? And then the remnants of the liberal women's rights group, right? The remnants of that then leaked its way into the Democratic Party of today. And the remnants of that were, you have to hate men because all men are evil. Every man is a sexist pig, and that's what women should hate. And you should envy men in a way because men are stronger than you are physically, so you should envy them. And so now when I make a movie, it all shows out. Now the woman is the physically stronger, more dominant person. And she's the mentally and emotionally stronger and more dominant person. In every movie I got to watch, there's a woman in charge of everything. And the men are just idiots to be beaten up, kicked in the groin, or just emotionally and mentally abused and cast aside and disregarded. No, could you have at least something where men and women are on some level equal? No, you got to completely turn things around based on the old paradigm of liberal feminism, which is you got to hate men because every man himself is in fact an evil person. Not Garland Nixon, who says, hey, women are trying to eat, men are trying to eat. Why don't we look at ourselves as working people who are trying to make it out here and try to deal with fairness, as far as a working class, as an economic class. We can come together and we can stand up together for ourselves because we got these very rich people who are they're going to stand together. You don't see a bunch of rich people getting together. Well, I'm a female. You don't see Sheldon Adelson's video saying, well, I can't go along with the Zionism of other Jewish men because they're men and I hate. No, the Zionists all work together, men, women, or whatever. They're going to all work together. But what they want us to do is to fight over the men versus the women. And now what we end up with this, and this is what is off-putting to people. I'll simplify it. You end up with a party that pushes feminized men and masculinized women. right? Ultimately, it comes to this. The woman is now what you thought the men was. She's physically superior. She's mentally and emotionally superior. In all of the movies, look at it. The woman's like in charge and she's this and blah, blah, blah. And the men are walking around looking like a bunch of idiots and they're like gay and they're now very feminine. And it shows that the liberal view of feminism was very twisted in the first place. It was a dynamic of power. It was a dynamic of anger and envy. We hate all men because they're men and they're all bad and evil and sexist and sexist and pigs. Therefore, we must replace them with ourselves. And we are kind of angry at ourselves because we're physically weaker than them. So what we're going to do is completely really, and you'll see it in the movies now, where the men are now what we felt that we were, which wasn't true. And we are what we thought the men were, the projection of our mind of what men. You look at these female superhero, Marvel superheroes, and those are the projection in their mind of what they thought men were. This powerful but shallow creature that could defeat everything, outthink everything, smarter than everybody, tougher than everybody, but very, very shallow, emotionally shallow. That's the way they saw men, and that's the way in the movies they've created women now. And the men are ignorant little schlubs wandering or aimlessly waiting for a woman to tell them to do. They've created the dynamic, which was twisted. That was not the dynamic between men and women. And might I add this, they didn't accept that if a woman chooses to be a housemaker, a wife, if a woman chooses to exceed a more, I hate to use this word, but I'll use it because people know what it means, a more traditional view of the household, right? If women chose to live that way, that it was still dignified. That a woman who raises her children and takes responsibility for the children in the home, should she choose to do that, marry a man, they agree with it, that's a dignified thing to do. That the way you choose to live your life is dignified. And you know what? If two women are gay and they're getting married and they're going to do whatever they're going to do, if that's the way they choose their life, then it's dignified to me too. So why is it that if two women live a certain way or family decides a certain way, I can say that ain't the way I live or whatever, but that's dignified. It's your choice. But if a woman chooses a more traditional role, it's undignified, so much so that you can't even acknowledge in Hollywood that it exists anymore. So the Democrats, I don't even know what to say about them. That's the direction they've taken, and I'll just be as blunt as I can. They've taken the path of the traditional white liberal, and it ain't good for nobody, and it damn sure ain't good for them. I'll add this. They don't even know that they lost, that their minds were turned to mush by Russiagate. They were taught to believe things that are senseless, that make no sense. There are people that I used to say, yeah, I ain't down with that. I mean, you can call me a conspiracy theorist because I'm skeptical of the system, but you're taking it a little too far. And I'd be like, yeah, that makes no sense, right? After Russiagate, I can't give them a hard time. There is no more preposterous and absurd conspiracy theory than Russiagate. And these poor bastards still believe it. They still believe it. So they have created a brainwashed, mindless cult of people who can't even accept that they lost the election, even though they got blown out. You know what? That'd be like Kansas City last night. What did they lose? 40-20. And it was actually worse than that, saying the ref stole it. No, the ref didn't stole it. You were beaten by a superior team. And sometimes you just got to say, you know what? Nature took its course. Hey, Trump beat us. That's what they need to say, but they can't do it. And they can't. And so now they've decided that since they already believe they have the moral high ground, now they can just wake up and say, oh, Trump's evil, and we've got to stand up against this fascist. There are people who believe that you're a fascist. You committed a genocide, the whole COVID stuff, firing people because they wouldn't take the jab. And people are like, come on now. Joe Blow, this guy may decide not want to take the jab. If that guy over there wants to take the jab, I may not do it, but he's got a right to take it if he wants to. He can drink battery acid if he wants to. I wouldn't advise against it, but it's up to him. And he may call me an idiot for not taking it, but that's okay. He can call me an idiot. I support his right to say whatever he wants. I support free speech and I support his right. But you're going to fire me because I won't? There are a lot of people that saw those kinds of things as fascism. right? So now they're going to wake up one day after starting war with Russia, after threatening war with China, after committing a genocide in Gaza, after doing all of these things that people oppose and that even now they have to admit were, shall we say, in error during COVID. And just like that, Trump has brought fascism to America. We're like, brought fascism to America. You guys are the embodiment of fascism in America. So there we are. Well, that's all I got to say. Um, we will see how this thing turns out. Why don't we take a look? And I'm going to see, is there, not are, is there any, since I since I'm not going to use correct. Ooh, great. We've got a bunch of people. Thank you very much. Joy is a new member. Guys, don't forget, you could be a member. It's only a couple bucks a month. It's like nothing. Thank you, Joy. Joy says, Garland. Oh, Garland Nixon membership. Thank you. Yes, boy, I really appreciate Joy's. Joy's really in a membership. And don't forget, people, you can click the join button and become a member. I really appreciate that. That's about it. Let me look on Rockfin. Did anybody? Ooh, howdy. Sounds good. We got a few people on Rockfin, and we've got to check for Rumble rants because I appreciate my Rumble audience. Oh, here we go. Rants. Geofa says, check out ABX 705 and AB 1705, laws that outlawed remedial education, basic skills in California community college, supposedly to remove this obstacle from achieving a college degree. Disaster. Thank you very much, Geofa. Certainly appreciate that. Rumble. And everybody, thank you very much. Had a lot of fun today. And might I add, please, if you can afford it, well, first of all, follow me on Rockfin, follow me on Telegram, follow me if you can afford Patreon or buy me a coffee. Buy me a coffee is always great. Buy me a coffee is great. You can just do buy Garland a coffee. How much? 5 beans. How many? However many you want. And you can do just like Patreon if you want to become a monthly subscriber on Buy Me a Coffee. It gives you that option. And of course, it's /Garland NH. And I don't know why the hell they put the H in there. And of course, Cash App, you name it, PayPal. And share this on all your social media platforms. Slam the like button, assault the like button, brutally attack the like button. And last but not least, thanks. Don't forget, share it everywhere on social media because I am very, very, very high. I mean, YouTube despises me. If you would look at my analytics, you would not believe it. I'm telling you. How in the hell do you have like 70,000 views and you lose 20 subscribers? And I've told people this. I go over my Google Analytics and look at the numbers and do calculations. And at one point, it was for every 318.8 subscribers, I mean, views, I would get a subscriber, right? Which I think is still low. One subscriber for every 318.8 views. And then I looked and I got one subscriber for every 7,000 views. And then I looked and I literally lost 10 subscribers for every 40,000. At one point, there was one where I lost a subscriber for every 40,000 views. Another where I lost 10 subscribers for every 40,000 views. How the hell do you do 80 and 90,000 views and lose subscribers? And I'm getting emails and contact from people saying, hey, why do you keep unsubscribing me? Why do I keep resubscribing to your channel? And I'm like, gee, yeah, imagine that. It's just the luck of the draw, huh? So please share this everywhere. And thanks a lot. Peace. I'm out.